You don't build standards by deciding them. You've said it before. You've told yourself what you will and won't tolerate. You've made the list in your head. You've defined what you expect. And for a moment, it feels solid. It feels like something has changed, like you've finally drawn the line. But then something small happens. Not a major violation. Something subtle. A delay. A shift. A moment that doesn't fully align. And instead of acting on it, you hesitate. You explain it. You give it time. You adjust. And in that moment, the standard disappears. Not because it wasn't real, because it wasn't enforced. Like, that's the difference. You don't build standards by deciding them. You build them by enforcing them repeatedly. Standards are built in moments, not declarations. Standards don't exist in theory. They don't exist in what you say when things are calm. They exist in specific moments. The exact moment something doesn't align. The exact moment you feel the hesitation. The exact moment your instinct tells you something is off. That's where a standard either becomes real or disappears. And most people miss this because they think standards are about clarity. They think if they define them well enough, they'll naturally follow them. But that's not how behavior works. Behavior is built through response, through repetition, through action in real time. And if your response in those moments is to adjust instead of enforcing, then the standard never becomes part of your behavior. It stays an idea. You keep trying to build standards without discomfort. This is the core mistake. You want standards without the cost. You want to hold the line without feeling tension. You want to enforce something without creating friction. But enforcement always creates discomfort. It creates uncertainty. It creates the possibility of loss. That's what makes it real. And if you're avoiding that discomfort, you're avoiding the very thing that would build the standard. So instead of enforcing it, you soften it. You delay it. You reframe the situation so you don't have to act. And every time you do that, you train yourself to tolerate what you said you wouldn't. The first moment is where everything is decided. It doesn't take multiple examples to know something isn't right. It takes one clear moment, one signal, one shift, and that's where the decision should happen. But most people don't act there. They wait. They collect more evidence. They let it repeat. And by the time they act, they're already invested, already attached, already involved. And now enforcement feels harder, heavier, more complicated. That's why standards feel difficult to maintain. Not because they're unclear, because they're not applied early enough. You don't build standards by thinking, you build them by doing. You can think about this all day, you can understand it completely. You can explain it perfectly. None of that builds anything. The only thing that builds a standard is action. Repeated action. Doing the same thing consistently when the moment appears, not once, not occasionally, every time. That's what turns something from an idea into a pattern. And once it becomes a pattern, it becomes automatic. It becomes part of how you operate. But until that happens, it's unstable. It's conditional. It's something you follow sometimes and override other times. This is why your standards don't hold. You've tried this before. You've decided what you want. You felt clear about it. And then when it actually happened, you didn't follow through. Not because you didn't understand, because you didn't want to deal with the discomfort of enforcing it. And that's the part no one wants to admit. Because it sounds simple. It sounds obvious. But in real time, it feels different. It feels harder. It feels like you might be making the wrong decision. It feels like you should wait. And every time you listen to that hesitation, you reinforce the same pattern. You see it, you don't act, and nothing changes. You need to reduce the negotiation window. The longer you think, the weaker your position becomes. Because thinking introduces alternatives. It introduces doubt. It introduces explanations that allow you to stay. That's why you need to reduce the time between recognition and action. The moment you identify something that doesn't align, you respond. Not aggressively, not emotionally, just directly. You don't give yourself time to create a different version of the situation that justifies staying. You act while the signal is still clear. Small enforcement builds strong identity. You don't need big dramatic moments to build standards. You need small consistent ones. Small decisions that you follow through on. Small boundaries that you hold. Small actions that match what you said you would do. Those are the moments that build identity. Not the big ones, the repeated ones. Because identity is not created through intensity. It's created through consistency. You have to be willing to lose what doesn't align. This is where most people stop. Because enforcing a standard means something might not continue. A situation might end. A connection might change. Something might not work out. And that possibility creates hesitation. So instead of enforcing the standard, you protect the situation. You prioritize keeping it over aligning with yourself. And every time you do that, you send a clear message that the situation matters more than your standard. Repetition is what makes it automatic. At first, it's not natural. It feels forced. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like you're going against yourself. But if you repeat the behavior enough times, it starts to shift. The hesitation decreases, the response becomes quicker, the decision becomes clearer. And eventually you stop thinking about it, you just act. That's when it becomes a standard, not when you define it, when it becomes automatic. This is how you stop starting over. Most people keep restarting because they never stabilize their behavior. They enforce something once, then override it the next time. And that inconsistency resets the pattern. It prevents momentum from building. It keeps everything unstable. But when you enforce something consistently, you don't restart. You build. Each action reinforces the last one. Each decision strengthens the pattern. And over time, it becomes solid. This is the difference between knowing and operating. You already know what to do, that's not the issue. The issue is whether you operate that way consistently, because knowing without operating doesn't change anything. It just creates awareness without results. And the shift happens when your behavior matches your understanding, when you stop thinking about what you should do and start doing it automatically. This is how standards become real. You don't build standards by deciding them. You build them by enforcing them, early, consistently, without negotiation. That's what turns them from preferences into something real. And once that happens, everything changes. Because now your behavior reflects your awareness. Now your decisions match your values. Now your standards are not something you think about, they're something you live. Thank you for watching. This is MindStickz.